Hello and welcome back to another edition of GNAT TV's In-Depth series. I'm Andrew McIntyre, the news director here at GNAT TV's News Project, and it's a pleasure to have you with us today. Today is Thursday, January 9th, and it's also a pleasure to be joined here in the studio by a group of folks who are going to be talking to us about teens and screens. We all are familiar with these little devices that we all seem to carry around a lot. The impact that they may be having on teenagers is a subject we're going to be talking about today, and it's great to be joined by this group of folks here from the Collaborative, the nonprofit community-based substance abuse prevention coalition based up in Londonderry. Great to welcome here today Laurie Zeif, who is a private therapist in Manchester. Neil McIntyre is the principal of the Flood Brook School in Londonderry, and also Natalie Philpot, who is a program coordinator with the Collaborative. Just to get things started, we're going to show a little short trailer, about 3 minutes long, taken from the movie Screenagers, The Next Chapter, just to get things started. So let's watch.
I made a film, Screenagers, to understand the risks of screen time for young people and solutions for healthy use. My daughter Tessa comes with me at times to talk, and while on the outside she looks fine, on the inside she's been really struggling emotionally. Even though I'm a doctor and feel competent at work, at home I'm feeling completely lost. How to understand Tessa and how best to help her. I know lots of teens are struggling with hard emotions like stress, anxiety, and depression.
Think about something that stresses you out.
Not being good enough.
I'm hurting inside, but I don't like to express my feelings that much.
I have a very hard time dealing with stress about school.
I see people doing fun things and then my anxiety just kind of takes over.
I wouldn't talk to my brother, I wouldn't talk to my sisters. I would just be in my room all day doing nothing.
He would always say, it's because you don't understand.
Seeing your child suffering is not something that is easy, so.
Teens often tell me how they turn to screens as their main coping skill.
When I get stressed, I tend to grab my phone and just start scrolling on social media.
What I worry about is the young people who say, when I'm feeling depressed or stressed or anxious, using social media makes me feel worse, but I do it anyway.
I want to understand the science of teens' emotional life and what can be done in schools and in our homes, including my own, to give all teens skills to navigate challenging emotions.
When parents stepped in and tried to help their children with the task, they showed decreases in stress and their children showed increases in stress.
She would say, this is how I feel and how could I respond more helpfully to her?
My relationship with my parents was then to where it is now. It's like night and day.
If you weren't invited, what would you do? How would you talk to the girl?
I like to learn from the high schoolers.
This is hard work. Everyone has to speak.
That was the first time I've ever talked about how I felt about my dad.
I definitely used to think that going to the counselors would be some sort of sign of weakness on my part.
This is a choice and this is what I choose to do. And I especially don't choose to do it because you told me to.
Okay, well, guess just to get us going here, why don't we go around the table and I'll just ask each of you, what were your reactions and takeaways from the trailer? Natalie, what did you think of it?
So I had actually never had any experience with Screenagers before. Neil McIntyre actually came to the Collaborative and asked us if we would partner with Flood Brook School to have a screening of the second installment of Screenagers. And Flood Brook School, a couple of years ago, did a screening of the first one, and I thought it was incredibly interesting. So I watched the first movie by myself, and I was totally floored. As a parent, as a member of this community, just really wrapping my brain around how necessary technology is in our day and age, but how it also has some adverse effects for not only teenagers, but adults as well.
Yeah.
As a school administrator, as an educator, Andrew, we see the effects of screens on child development, on family dynamics every single day. And the one thing I can say pretty concretely is that nobody has an answer to this. This is still new. This technology has only been in existence really for about 15 years between cell phones, smartphones specifically, and tablet technology. And then all of the different applications that we can use within that technology. We're still trying to catch up with how we should parent and raise children in this new environment, and that requires dialogue among the adults as we care for our children.
Yeah, I think I completely concur with both statements, and I think I do a fair amount of work with parents and teens, and parents and teens together. And I think if parents watch this film, especially along with their teenagers, I think it'll be really helpful in validating a lot of the challenges parents have. Parents are coming in to family therapy really at their wits' end, concerned about certain behaviors with kids, concerned about a rise in anxiety and depression, which is absolutely correlates with the advent of the smartphone. And you know, I think there's a lot of pushback from the kids saying, everybody has them, I need it for my homework, I need it for my social interaction. And I think parents really struggle with how to put limits out there, but I think it's incredibly important that they do put limits out there. So I think the movie helps validate that idea that it's appropriate and important.
Well, what are you noticing in the community regarding the use of technology, both from the student and parent perspective? How is that changing? Is the use of these phones and devices increasing at such an exponential rate that it really is getting alarming, or is it just sort of this natural progression, so to speak?
I don't even know if I would say it's alarming as much as it is this technology is ubiquitous. It's absolutely everywhere. Everybody has it. We have kids in our school as young as, I'd say, 2nd or 3rd grade who are coming into school with smartphone technology in their pocket. Yep. Not a lot of them, but by the time you start getting to 5th grade, saturation's pretty high. Middle school, absolutely every kid. It's socially crippling. The kids will report it's socially crippling if they don't have it. And then in terms of parents, I quite frankly don't know anybody who doesn't have a cell phone at this point. They've just become so again, I think we've reached the point of saturation. We're there, we're past it. And so now that we're at that point of saturation, it's like telephones when we were kids. Once everybody has them, then it's a matter of how do we live with them now, because they're not going away.
So do you have any sense that the use of this technology, of the smartphones, is it impacting students' like mental health in some way, or how is that playing out?
So we know from studies that there's a direct correlation with an increase in depression, anxiety, and suicide rate, especially amongst girls, that correlates. I don't think we can say is caused by, but correlates with the advent of smartphones, which is also, of course, the advent of social media. And I think what we're looking at is several things. I think one is a sense of social isolation. If you don't have actual emotional human contact with people, it does not fulfill a need that human beings need. And kids especially, but adults too, have a sense that they are interacting and having friends and relationships with people who they have never met, who they are only texting, or they've met and they know, but they only text. They don't even talk to on the phone. So I think the social isolation thing is one big issue. I think another big issue is the social media and the self-esteem piece that goes along with that. So you get everyone else's 5-second highlight reel of their day, and it looks like they're all having the best time ever, and you're feeling down, and you didn't get invited to that party, and all of those pieces, I think, are huge. I think phones, like anything that is problematic or addictive, it becomes a problem when it takes up time that would be better spent doing something healthy. And I think phones, without a doubt, or iPads or whatever, are taking up time that could be spent in physical activity, playing a board game, reading a book. And I think for all of us, probably, I know certainly for me, if my phone is sitting there and I am reading a book as a grown adult, it is really hard to not pick up the phone and look at it.
Yeah.
And so that interrupted concentration, I think, is a big problem. Sleep deprivation. Many of us sleep with the phone next to our bed. You wake up in 3 a.m, I look at the phone. Happened to me last night, and I found out that someone had hacked into my PayPal account, and so I spent an hour dealing with that, which did not need to be dealt with at 3 a.m. But, and finally, I will say, I think this is one of the pieces that doesn't get talked about a lot, but the anxiety and depression piece, when all of us, or at least the 3 of us, were young, if we were going to know anything on the news, we knew it because we either watched the news at 6 or 11, or we picked up a newspaper, which we probably didn't do a whole lot of. These kids are getting this news in the moment, constantly, and what I'm hearing about anxiety around bad things happening, bad things could happen, what if something bad happens, and what that does in a kid's developing brain is really concerning, and I don't think that there's any way to get away from it right now.
Boy, we could talk about that subject probably easily for the entire time, and that's one that I find myself thinking about a great deal, that whole question of people getting information from questionable sources. But we'll have to maybe save that for the next time you all come back here. I guess what strikes me is okay, these things aren't going to be disinvented, and they're not going to go away. So how do we manage them? If they're having all these effects that don't sound very good or don't sound very healthy, how are we supposed to cope with the fact that they're here and kids are going to use them?
That's a great question. And I think, and Lori, what you said was just so fantastic, and I really wanted to touch on how deceptive social media is, right? And how we feel like we are connected. And so what begins to happen is that we begin to associate our worth or how valid we are as a human being by how many likes we get or how many comments we get on our social media. And so many kids have Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, although Facebook is sort of for the older crowd now. Yeah. But it's really interesting, and so that mental health, that sort of anxiety is attached to things that really don't matter that much. And so yeah, I thought that was a really interesting point that you made.
To your question, Andrew, I think that first off, I think part of the purpose for us wanting to show this sequel is because it has to be an ongoing conversation. I know that there are a lot of parents. I interact with hundreds of parents in our school community, and I know that there are parents who feel like they're the only ones. Every parent feels like they're the only one going through anything. They're the only parent in the whole wide world whose kid is acting like this or who is having these conflicts. And so there's a lot of intense personal self-doubt associated with parenting around technology. And if your kid is saying you're the worst person in the whole wide world because all my friends have this and you won't let me have it, or none of my friends have to leave their phone in the kitchen at night, only me, then what the impact that has on the parenting health of those adults is that they feel like I'm not doing it right and I'm breaking my relationship with my child. And as a result, they may acquiesce to what their kid is demanding, regardless of how unrealistic it is. And I think that we need to get parents together so they all know that we are all struggling with this. I struggle with this with 2 teenagers in my house, and it is a daily discussion, but the discussion needs to be had. And I think parents will find strength in partnership with one another when they realize, wow, we're not the only ones going through this. But we do need to start building up people's strength so that they can make the hard decisions and have the hard conversations with their kids.
And I think building on that, one of the things that I talk to parents a lot about is give your kids the credit of understanding that they can handle distress. It is okay if they go to bed disappointed. It is okay if they feel left out of something. You know, it's okay if they're hungry at 4 o'clock and dinner isn't until 5 o'clock. Like we have, and my youngest is 21, and I'm absolutely guilty of this, but we have raised a group of young adults that think that distress is unacceptable and not doesn't work. And there's nothing wrong with it. So I think giving parents room to be able to say, yeah, I get that you're really disappointed that we're taking Snapchat off your phone, but here's the thing. And, and to be able to hold that. And I think parents get very beat up by kids because you're absolutely right, they're all doing it. And the other advent of the world that we're in is not that long ago. Parents talked to each other a lot more. They went out and had coffee together. There weren't two working parents. There was more time for that conversation, and now we don't have the time for it, and we don't do it.
We've abandoned, as an American culture, there's a great book, Putnam, I believe, is the author, called Bowling Alone. And it just talks about, and Bowling Alone is a great book that just talks about how the isolation of the American populace, and this is a prime example of it. But just to build off of Lori's earlier point is also that we're training kids how to not be bored. So we're training them to not ever feel a moment's displeasure or any sort of distress, as Lori said, but we're also, with such immediacy coming from the technology that they have, they can plug into, they can jack into almost anything. They can access people and information and entertainment instantaneously. And as a result, these kids have no idea how to be bored. And heaven forbid that if they have a moment's boredom, and then what that does is then that trains us, because we see our kids in distress and we leap right in and we provide something to fill that void. And as a result, kids don't know how to ever be at rest, cognitively, emotionally at rest. And we end up seeing kids who are increasingly fidgety. I think it's leading to this increased anxiety in young people.
And young adults with complete failure to launch, because they do not know how to figure stuff out. Can't get across campus without looking at their phone to find, how did we all do it? Calling mom. I've had a woman in my office with her college sophomore calling her mother to say, I don't know where the building is for my next class. I mean, I promise you, this is not unusual. And I mean, to be honest, I couldn't get to my sister-in-law's house that I've been to 200 times without turning on my phone. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think a lot of what we are striving to do at the collaborative this year, whether it be, anything that is addictive, really engaging in that prevention work, and that's getting down to brass tacks coping skills. What can I do when I feel uncomfortable? What can I do as a young person if I am feeling like I am missing out, if I am anxious, if I am upset, if I am sad? And that's where sort of things like mindfulness, which is a big buzzword now, but mindfulness and being present, being okay with not being okay. And I think that's one of the big things that the collaborative really is trying to focus on this year, with adjusting the way that we've approached our Refuse to Use program and really bringing it back to, okay, before we even get to that, feeling, what can we do to make sure that we are taking incremental steps to take care of ourselves, the people that we are, and not engaging in that really sort of anxious behavior.
Now, the collaborative is going to be showing a screening of the Screenagers in its full length version?
Yep, we'll be, so the collaborative and Flood Brook are partnering to offer Screenagers the Next Chapter, which is the sequel to the original movie Screenagers. And we'll be showing that. The date of that is January 28th.
Up at Flood Brook?
At Flood Brook School. It's open to the public. Anybody who wants to come, enjoy the discussion. It's not just open to Flood Brook parents. We would welcome anybody within the Northshire community. This is important to start a larger dialogue, so we want to open the doors up to as many people as would like to come.
And I think the point you made was really great, that it is going to be sort of an informal format where we'll be sitting at tables and families will be able to actually converse and have that shared experience and talk to one another about, oh, your kid said that to you? Okay, well, my kid said the exact same thing. Right. Yeah. So go ahead.
Because of the absence of communal parenting, because of that, we did this the last time we did a screening, was we had this forum format so we watched the film, and then people were at tables at mixed company, and everybody got together and we had some discussion prompts afterwards, but we had to chase them out of there because everybody was so embroiled in these deep conversations. And I think that all of the parents walked out of there feeling like, boy, not only do I have some new skills and some new ideas, but I also have a greater sense of shared responsibility with everybody else and partnership with other parents. That's how we're going to get through this.
Is there any evidence that any of you are aware of actual physiological brain damage that these devices cause? I mean, I hear that there's some evidence to suggest that. But to the extent that you've studied this, is that something you're familiar with or aware of, or is that just sort of a kind of a supposition that, well, they've got to be rewiring kids' heads in some way or another?
You used the word rewiring. There's a great book that came out in 2010 by a gentleman named Larry Rosen called Rewired. And it was one of the seminal works in discussing, I mean, this is, again, 5 years after smartphone technology came on the scene. So even 5 years later, we could see that this technology we suspected was beginning to change the physiological development of our children's brains. Since then, there have been a couple of other great books, one called It's Complicated, another one recently called Glow Kids, all great books that are continuing to sort of build upon the body of work that supports that, yes, we are in fact seeing a physiological change in the development of children's brains. Doesn't mean that they can't be rewired once again, but how could it not?
Right.
Well, that's pretty scary. What community supports exist right now, I guess, to kind of for parents who may be watching thinking, I guess it's time for me to step up here and kind of get involved in this. Are there any community supports that are presently available that they could maybe latch onto quickly? That the collaborative may be having going on, or other community organizations that,
I think part of it is, honestly, when I talked about the fact that the screen time takes up time that could be spent doing something else, free skate at Riley Rink, refuse to use ski programs, hike Mount Equinox. I mean, I think all the things that we think about families doing, alarmingly to me, we are not hearing about families doing these things. Have dinner together. Do your own family book club together. Encourage activities in the community or within your home that are more communal and do not involve a screen.
I agree. I mean, as soon as you asked the question, Andrew, right away, my brain went Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts,
right,
baseball, soccer. Like there are so many things that yes, there are things that parents can latch onto, and they're replacement activities, is how I would say it. And those replacement activities are generally healthier. They help children build greater interpersonal skills. It helps them build resilience in different ways. So it's anything that requires the child to put the phone down or put the tablet down and participate with other human beings. Yeah, those are the resources, and they're all around us. But to Lori's point, we're seeing diminishing participation in all of those things over time. Is it because of technology? I think that would be a difficult correlation to make, but I'm going to guess that it's not helping.
Well, because I think, and I'll put a plug in for Girls on the Run, which I think your school, all schools are starting soon.
We sure do. Yep.
Okay, so Girls on the Run is amazing, and it's been around for a while because I was a coach when my girls were young. And when your child says, I don't want to do Girls on the Run, I'd rather just, and as a parent, back in the day, well, what are you going to do? Well, now the kid is going to come home and they're going to sit in their room and they're going to be on their screen. And that's why I think we see the correlation of kids not, because Girls on the Run, if they get out there and do it, I promise you they will love it. The girls always love it. But if you let them stay home and sit in the room and be on their screen, they'll tell you that that's the thing that they'd rather be doing.
Which is developmentally appropriate. I mean, they're going to want to kind of revert to the easiest thing, the path of least resistance.
Sure.
That's especially adolescents. That is very developmentally appropriate, and sometimes they really need to be inspired to rise to challenges. And so it's important, though, for parents to see that part of their role is to help bring their child to those challenges and say, you can do this, and this may be momentarily uncomfortable, but you can do this, and this will be good for you. And trust me, I'm your dad. Or trust me, I'm your mom.
Right.
And I have faith in you. And I think I think parents don't often realize that you send an inadvertent message when you say, all right, I know you're shy and girls on the run is going to be people you don't know. You're right. Okay, so stay home in your room. You send an inadvertent message that supports the fact that you can't do it, rather than saying, I get that it's going to be hard and that you think you're not going to be able to do it, but you know what? I've got faith in you can do this. It's going to be great, I promise you. And yeah.
Well, what do you think kids think about this? I mean, do they have a sense that, gee, you know, I spend like 90% of my time during the day on a phone. That can't be right in some way or another. Do you get the sense that they have sort of uneasy feelings about this, or is it just like these are, like you say, so ubiquitous and so woven into the fabric of everyday life? I mean, we don't just use these for phones. We use these for
everything.
Thousands of different functions, it seems like. Do they have a sense of unease about this, or is it just sort of, it's like...
I think mostly they don't, and I think part of the reason is we as adults are on our devices, you know, to a fault as well. And so when we think about how to change it, the really first thing that has to happen is us modeling balance and putting down our phones. And it's really hard. You know, you're watching TV, and suddenly this sense of like, oh, I need to see who texts me, but why? But do I? But we do it. We all do it. And you know, so I think the first step is modeling that behavior, because I don't think kids see it as a problem.
My children have never grown up in a world without smartphones.
Right.
So I have 3 children. My youngest was born in 2005. I mean, my oldest was born in 2005, which is the year that the first iPhone came out. So my children have never known a world without them. So no, they're not. I don't get the sense that they're aware of it anymore. Unless I make them aware of it, or my wife makes them aware of it, that this is abnormal behavior. But to them, it's not. It's completely normal. It's completely typical. Just like us, we all grew up with telephones. Right. My father, who was born in 1926, he did not grow up with a telephone in his house. So my growth with technology was different than his. Just like my children's growth with technology is different than mine was. And so they don't see it, and it's therefore very important that parents help kids understand that this is what your use of this technology is actually an example of an imbalanced life. Right. And I'm here to try to help you strike a better balance. That's my responsibility as your parent.
I have said to parents, and this may sound dramatic, but you would not let your child wake up in the morning and lay in bed and smoke weed for 3 hours. You wouldn't let him wake up and crack open a beer in bed. But if you're letting him be on his phone all morning, it is not a lot different. It is ducking out of reality. It is not engaging in the healthy part of the day.
Well, sounds like it will be useful then for a lot of folks to attend this event at Flood Brook School January 28th at 7 o'clock, was it? Or
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. Yep. Okay. And I'm assuming free admission?
Free admission.
Free admission. Yeah. We're going to have food, which is always enticing, and childcare will be provided. So please reach out to the collaborative office if you would like to reserve a spot for childcare.
Okay. Well, it sounds like a worthwhile event to attend. I think I should probably go to it too.
I know.
Anyway, I want to thank Lori Zeif, Neil McIntyre, Natalie Philpot for being with us today to talk about this very important subject. Hope you've all found the show interesting and informative, and we'll see you again the next time. Have a great day.